This video is part of the 5 Under 5 Decoupage Decor Challenge. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it later on in the video. For my video, I'm going to show you many different styles of decoupage. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the video. Project number 1, Farmhouse Jar. So this is just a jar I got at Dollar Tree for $1.25. I got this fabric strips also at Dollar Tree for $1.25. So that's pretty much it for the cost of this project. I just have some extra things like twine and glue and paintbrushes that we're not going to include. So to start things off, I'm going to paint the jar. Just paint it white because I'm going to wrap it with the fabric, and I want a nice light background so the fabric pops. I also want it to be a farmhouse style jar because I've had those strips of fabric for quite a long while and I can't really figure out what else to do with them. So I make sure the paint is dry before I go about working with the fabric. And that paint was just some of that oopsie paint from Lowe's. So now that I'm putting the Mod Podge on, I'm coming in with the fabric right away. So I'm not waiting for it to dry or anything. I'm just Mod Podging, putting the fabric on. And then on the corners there, you'll see I do a little, 2 little cuts so that it sort of folds over the curve of the jar there. See, 2 more cuts. And it fits nicely over the rounded bottom as well. And then I just cut off a little bit of the end, but I do want some overlap. I just find it stays on better like that. So I'm just going over it with my finger, making sure. And then I'll do the same thing with this second piece. I did have to trim it, so basically just cut the strip in half, but left it the same length. And I came around the jar, but I didn't have to do the little trims in the corners on this one, just because of the way the jar is shaped. So once I got that second piece of fabric down, I'm just going over the whole thing with some Mod Podge. And since this is fabric, you can be pretty generous with that Mod Podge. It's going to stay on there really well. I wanted there to be a barrier between the 2 pieces of fabric, so I just took my twine and the smallest little line of hot glue, and then I wrapped and wrapped and wrapped. I didn't do just one, and maybe like 3 or 4 times. And then a trim. Now I'm going to add a finger bow to this, and I do my finger bows a little bit different than most people. I wrap it around my 4 fingers maybe 7 times, and then I hold it and I either cinch it in the middle or I twist it, and then I just wrap some twine around it. Before I do the final knot, I do sort of check it and make sure it's even on both sides, and then when I'm happy with how it looks, I go ahead and glue it down. And now I have my farmhouse wooden silverware, and this is a little jar to hold them. Better look at the final reveal. Project number 2 is an orange straw jar. So I have these napkins. I think they were $1.25 from Dollar Tree, and I also have the plastic jar, which is also from Dollar Tree for $1.25, and that's pretty much it. So you'll notice I already made a boo-boo there. I didn't get all the layers of the napkin off and totally messed up. And also when I was trying to make it, I used my heat gun and my plastic bottle melted a little bit. So this is try number 2. And instead of doing it like I did the glass jar, I'm going to do it with my school glue stick. And I've actually used the school glue stick to do a calendar image on a jar, so I figured it would work for a napkin. And it worked out perfectly as far as the shape of the napkin, because I just cut it in half and that formed the top of the jar. And I just would do like go up and down with my glue stick a couple times, and then pat down the napkin very carefully and gently, sort of rub on it. It's much easier than if you were rubbing down on Mod Podge, because this is a lot thicker. It has like a gooiness to it, and I much prefer this over the Mod Podge if I'm going to have to work with something that's wet and that's delicate. If this was fabric, obviously I could have done the Mod Podge, but since this is the napkin, it's a little delicate, I'm using the glue stick. And you notice I took like the palm of my hand and sort of went over it, making it wrap around the bottom of the jar there. And you see I come in and make sure there's not too many wrinkles. Now I'm putting the lid on because I want to give it a spray here. I'm going to be handling it and I don't want it to get messed up. So you notice I sprayed a few times there. And not too much, because it will start to wrinkle under that spray. Now I leave the top of the jar on because that gives me an idea of where to wrap the twine. Just like my previous jar had twine on it, only this time I'm wrapping the top to cover the top edge. You know, maybe I should have let the napkin go a little bit higher, because I do have to wrap a lot of string here, or a lot of twine. But I actually like how it looks. You know, it's individual, it's unique. More of my out-of-the-box crafting on view here. And I didn't even tie knots in this twine. I just put down the smallest dab of hot glue and just press the twine into it. Then I'll do the finger bow now, just like I did in the previous jar. Wrapped it around my fingers, cinched it in the middle, and then wrap the middle with a piece of twine. Then look at it, make sure it's even on both sides, trim it, and then glue it down. And usually I have some straggler pieces of twine from the way I wrapped it, and also from the parts that I trimmed off. So I just kind of pull 2 pieces of twine out from the bow and trim off the rest. And that sounds kind of weird, but if you do it, you'll see how pieces of twine are hanging down. But there you have it. I'll give you a better look at the final reveal. Jumping in with a little bit more information about the playlist. It's hosted every month by Emily from Farm Charm Chic, and this month's guest host is Buffy from Buffy Designs. Their channel links and a link to the playlist will be in my description box below. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the video. Project number 3 is what I call a pillowcase home sign. Basically, it's a Dollar Tree blank and a Dollar Tree pillowcase. So maybe around $2.50, but I mean, not even. This About Me whiteboard is going to get a coat of white paint. I tried wiping off the text with some rubbing alcohol and that didn't work. So I taped off the frame with my painter's tape, my new painter's tape. And I just put enough paint down that you couldn't really see the background clearly. I didn't really need to, you know, give it 2 or 3 coats because I didn't need it to be perfect white. So I paint it and I wait till it's still tacky but a little dry and take the paint off. I kind of learned that just through trial and error, you know. There were times when I did it with it wet and I got paint all over the place, and there were times I waited for it to be totally dry. Here I'm checking out how much room I need to put the home sign down on the pillowcase. And I decided to paint it blue because there was a lot of like bluish gray and blue in the pillowcase. And I'm going to come in and sand the edges to give it a little bit of a border and make it pop on the fabric, the pillowcase fabric. Now here I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off, taking my time. It did try and lift in one spot, but I just put my finger on it and then it stayed down okay. The paint, I mean. The paint was pretty dry in some areas and it did try to peel up. And like I said, I just put my finger down on it. And a little bit of editing error here. I'm showing you this particular image for just a little bit longer than I need to. Okay, checking to make sure the paint is totally dry. I'm going to rub a little bit of burnt umber on the frame, but you don't see that because I had a low battery. I did a regular Mod Podge for the pillowcase fabric. Just did it when it was wet and stretched the pillowcase over it when it was wet and then just left it. I did a little bit more Mod Podge on top, just like you would if you were doing a regular Mod Podge. What I was trying to do is show you guys all different kinds of Mod Podge. And this would be like a traditional Mod Podge, but with fabric. After I was done, it seemed a little plain and boring. So I yanked some flowers and leaves off of a wreath that I purchased that I thought was on sale, but wasn't. And I paid $14 for a wreath that I didn't really want in the first place. So I'm going to yank things off it and I'm going to get good use out of it. And I'll give you a better look at this project during the final reveal. Project number 4 is a love door hanger. It's not Valentine's Day. This is just an everyday door hanger. I really like the words like home, love, welcome. So that's what I chose to do for this one. I also wanted to show you the burn method of working with Mod Podge napkins. So I'll go ahead and use the same blue from the previous projects. Have a little bit of matching going on there, and then I'm going to cut off the bottom of this little sign. And if you just go like da, 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 like that, just little cuts, there's less of a chance of the wood splintering. And we had a little bit of trouble with this napkin. It seemed like it was only 2 layers, so I got the bottom layer off, and it was going in strips, like the whole thing wasn't going at once. So I really had to work on it. I trimmed it and everything so that I could cut the lemon out and just use the blue. So went ahead and made sure it was going all the way across like how I wanted. So got the lemon out, got these lined up. Now the word love has already been Mod Podged. I'm not sure if I showed you that. I'm being very precise here about getting this napkin down. Go ahead and use my Hippo heat press to iron it down. And then I remembered that was sitting there and I didn't want it to get stuck just yet because I hadn't lined it up yet. So I was doing everything by the book here. And I went to handle the second piece of napkin and realized there was another fabric or another ply of napkin, a third ply, a third layer, as you however you want to say that. So I was like, yikes, I'm going to go ahead and work on the second one. So I got the second one ironed and I pulled the top layer off, and you'll see what I was left with was just like a white layer that stuck to the wood there. So I went ahead and worked on the part that actually did go on right, and that's the second part. And you'll see I'm just going to burn, trim it and then burn what's left basically. And it comes right to the edge where the Mod Podge is and then stops. It does leave a little bit of a char mark. Some people don't like that, or some people choose to sand it off. I like it, so I left it. Then I took my sandpaper and did a really, really, really good sanding to try and get most of that first piece of napkin off, and then I went ahead and put it on just like the first one there and burned it just like the first one as well. I went through my ribbon stash and found this blue that I thought would look good with the other blues in this project. I yanked some more flowers and leaves off that wreath that I told you about in the previous project. I'm stapling some of it down because I was like really low on hot glue. In fact, I can't believe I'm still using hot glue. I've used sparkles. I've found like glue sticks in like the bottom of my boxes and things like that, and I've worked on it. Now, this project is my least favorite, not because of how it looks, but because it's crooked. It came out crooked, which is too bad because I love the colors and I love the word love. The bow is just 2 loops cinched together on top of an awareness bow, and I'll give you a better look during the final reveal. The 5th and final project is what I call Pretty as a Peacock. It's just a really pretty lunch napkin. I believe it came off eBay. It was a package of a few napkins that cost a couple dollars. So let's say it cost $1. The Dollar Tree blank is like $1.25. So we're looking at about $2.25, $2.50. Pretty much the same as all the previous projects. So I'm rubbing some Mod Podge on a piece of canvas that had been taken off of something for a previous project. And I'm just going to do 1 coat with the sponge there that came off of a stick, because it used to be a sponge paintbrush. But now it's just a sponge. Anyway, we went ahead and got the Mod Podge on the canvas and set it aside to dry. And now I'm taking some burnt umber and a baby wipe and rubbing it into the wood on this Dollar Tree blank. It's a chalkboard underneath with a nice frame, and I like the shape of the frame, so that's why I used it, because the peacock picture is like so fancy, you know, so I thought it belonged in this kind of frame. So my canvas is dry, and it just dried just sitting aside for a few minutes. It really took no time at all. So what I'm going to do is just do a couple of measurements like with the template. I'm not really using a ruler for this. So I made sure I got all the layers off and was left with only 1 layer for that peacock. Now, since I'm putting the peacock on the white canvas, I don't need to do any painting. So I'm checking how much and how I want to situate the napkin and everything, how much I need to cut off. And I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of parchment paper on top there and just use my Hippo heat press to attach the napkin to the canvas. And see, this is a different method of decoupage. I'm decoupaging on the canvas instead of the actual blank. And I'm also using the decoupage supply as the focal point. In a lot of the previous projects, the decoupaging was for the background, and in this project it's actually the star of the show. I found some old wood glue, and so I put the wood glue on the back of the canvas. I couldn't decide what glue to use, really. Like, what glue sticks best to a black chalkboard? But I did trim it a few times before I put the glue on there. I just kept checking it. And it's okay if the edges are showing, because we are going to put some rope down. We're going to create a rope border to fix that. I do put a little bit more Mod Podge on top, just barely wetting my foam brush with a little bit of Mod Podge. And now I'm going to take that rope and make the little rope border. That just hides any imperfections in cutting. It's actually still showing on one side, but it's not super noticeable. I'm just going to wrap the rope around twice because of that, and I decided not to. And I just use my paintbrush in the corner like that to put down the rope as deep into that corner as possible. So it's not like a rounded corner. It follows the shape of the frame. And that was a wired twine. That's why it was easy to do it like that. And I'm just going to reattach the original hanging rope. And then I found this little bow just on my desk, so I decided that looked good on it. It's almost the same color as the frame. So there you have it, and I'll give you a better look during the final reveal.